Good afternoon, everybody. It's Tuesday, not even Wednesday yet. Feels like it's Wednesday. Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. Coming up on the show later today, I've got friend and incredible thought leader, just really brilliant, Charlie Sykes. He's going to be joining today at 12:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Reminder, if you're watching us here live on Substack, you can drop in your comments and thoughts. Ian Walters is here. He'll pick those up, and we'll get to them at the end of the show. If you're catching us on the replay at Political Voices Network at 8 p.m., make sure to leave some comments over there. I read a comment yesterday asking, am I related to Tony LoBianco? Well, based on the stunning good looks and incredible acting career as we see here, I would say yes. But actually, no, I'm not really. There surprisingly are a lot of LoBiancos in the United States. So thanks, though. He's a great bearer of the name. Us Lobos are proud. We're going to do a heavy one today, another heavy one. We're doing a lot of heavy ones this week. It's a heavy moment. Okay, not a time for quiet, for funny. I still do Labubu stuff. I couldn't find a Labubu John Adams, so I didn't do that. We'll have, but that's a running theme. Maybe I'll be like Joe Rogan at some point and have a Labubu Buddhist here, Labubu Buddha statue, but not right now. No, today I wanted to get Charlie Sykes on the show specifically because he wrote a very excellent piece back in May, which he re-upped recently. And he talked about this on NPR. It's about why we engage in politics. What is the purpose of this? And he cites the legendary Washington Post Charles Krauthammer, who, of course, passed away back in 2018. He had a lengthy career, 4 decades, incredible column writing. I used to read him religiously. Really enjoyed him. Just an incredible writer, incredible thinker. And he cites Krauthammer really channeling John Adams for why we do this. What is the purpose of this? I'm going to read a quote from John Adams in his May 12th, 1780 letter to his wife, Abigail Adams, in which he writes, "The science of government it is my duty to study more than all other sciences. The art of legislation and administration and negotiation ought to take that place, indeed to exclude in a manner all other arts. I must study politics and war that my sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy. My sons ought to study mathematics. My sons ought to study mathematics and philosophy, geography, natural history, naval architecture, and navigation, commerce, and agriculture, in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture, statuary, tapestry, and porcelain," Adams wrote. This is a foundational philosophy of America, of modern society. So we're going to be talking about that with Charlie here in a few minutes. Before we get to the deep philosophy here, let's just hit the news real quick. Charlie Kirk murder suspect Tyler Robinson is due up in court virtually later today in Utah. He's being detained. He'll be appearing virtually. NBC News reports that he is expected to be charged with aggravated murder along with other charges. In Utah, aggravated murder does carry the potential of the death penalty. So that will be happening later today at 5 p.m. Earlier today, another murder suspect, Luigi Mangione, who many months ago was alleged to have shot and killed United Healthcare executive Brian Thompson on the streets of New York. In New York this morning, he did score a bit of a legal victory here. 2 charges tied to alleged acts of terrorism were tossed out. However, he is still facing second-degree murder charges there in New York, and also federal murder charges. Now, the defense is arguing this via The Guardian. The defense there is arguing that all the state charges should be dropped out in lieu of the federal charges, because functionally that would be him facing a double jeopardy if he's convicted on both federal and state charges there. In keeping with the trend, this is the theme of the second term of President Donald Trump. He is suing, again, another news organization, a major news organization. This time, the New York Times. He's alleging defamation, seeking $15 billion in damages. This due to Susan Butner and a number of other reporters when they did their great book digging into his finances, his taxes. Some of us watching are probably old enough to remember back when it was a big deal to actually get a hold of his taxes and see what was going on there. They found a veritable house of cards, a shell game, a lot of tax dodging, a history of tax dodging, which they recounted with diligence in their reporting. It's interesting in this. If you guys don't already, you should make sure to subscribe to Brian Stelter over at CNN, former colleague when I was working there at CNN, incredible media reporter. He's been writing about this extensively. His Reliable Sources newsletter, an extension of the Reliable Sources show, which they brought back. I'm really excited they brought it back. Is just a really great detailed look at this interaction of this White House, the Trump White House, and the media organizations, and how the major media organizations are handling this. Now, as we know, ABC News via Disney acquiesced, all right, when facing a similar lawsuit, paid him millions of dollars to his presidential library. Same thing for CBS when faced with the FCC, his FCC, threatening to block the merger that would put it under the son of Republican mega donor Larry Ellison, David Ellison, Skydance Media. But as Stelter notes in his newsletter, the New York Times has been, and especially Salzberger, the scion of the Salzberger family, now who owns New York Times, continuing the family ownership, has been really ardent about the free press implications in all of this, the threats to democracy, the threats to a free and fair democracy, our First Amendment rights, why we're able to do this right now, why we are not in a country where censorship is government dictated. That is in the very bedrock. It's in the DNA of America. And Salzberger, at the 50th anniversary of IRE, yesterday night, the Investigative Reporters and Editors Conference, was talking about the threats that journalists are facing all around the world, not least of which is right here in the U.S. Now it is a routine threat. I was watching a clip from earlier today. Veteran White House reporter Jonathan Karl asked Trump what he thought about Pam Bondi saying it was time to go after journalists. And he replied, he said, well, maybe I'm going to go after you. So this is a theme of this second Trump term. All right. This is a defining theme, I would note, in addition to the violent ICE arrests going on around the nation, in addition to the import taxes, tariffs. These are all defining themes of the second Trump term. Okay, so we're going to have Charlie coming on here in a second. Before we do that, I want to remind everybody, sign up at 24site.news. You can get the newsletter in the morning. Drop your comments. If you're watching us here live right now, drop your comments and we'll get to them at the end of the show. If you're catching us at 8 p.m. on the replay on YouTube over at Political Voices Network, make sure you drop in your comments there. I do live in the comments, despite all better judgment, so I will reply. That is me. Yes, really me. Swimming in the toxicity. Okay, guys, I'm gonna bring on Charlie now. I'm so pumped. Here we go. Charlie,
how are you?
What's up, man?
Good summary of where we're at right now. I was just listening to you.
Thank you. And you are, I mean, in this current life, in a long time life, you are a broadcast professional. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
I'm a recovering broadcast professional, but I'm recovering from a lot of things these days.
How long does it take to detox?
I'll let you know.
Man, I gotta tell you, I was driving back from the gym on Saturday with NPR on, like any good coastal, and there you are, man. Were you on with Inskeep? I think it was with Inskeep.
No, it was Scott Simon, Weekend Edition. Yeah.
I had an NPR driveway moment. I was like, I gotta hear this. This is so good. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I loved what you wrote about Krauthammer and also Adams, John Adams. Why now? Why did you of any time? Because of course, as you note in your most recent piece, and guys, if you don't already, make sure to sign up for Charlie's Substack. To the contrary, okay, very excellent. I get it every day. He's writing about this. So you re-upped the piece from Charles that you wrote about Charles Krauthammer, your old friend, back in May. Why now?
Why not now? I mean, given how horrible things are, this is one of those things that I just go back to every once in a while when you get discouraged. And I think a lot of people do get discouraged, or depressed or frightened about what's happening in the world. And I think that there's a normal human instinct to say, well, what if I just shut off the politics? What if I just went on and lived my life? And there's a lot of things that I'm interested in. Charles Krauthammer was a Renaissance man. He was a doctor. He could have written about anything. He could have written about architecture, art, opera, and yet he chose to write about politics. And he explained it that if you don't get the politics right, everything else can be destroyed. And he had the benefit of our history. We've seen millennia of cultures wiped away in countries like China, entire civilizations wiped away in Germany because we don't get the politics right. So, I think that there is this push and pull that we've all felt. I don't know if you felt it as well, where you think, what, life is too short. Why am I constantly writing about these political doofuses? Why am I immersing myself in the idiocracy? And the answer is because if we get that wrong, terrible things happen. And this is one of the great lessons of history. John Adams knew it. Although, by the way, his sons did stay in politics. His oldest son became president of the United States. I want to mention that. But, Charles Krauthammer is the kind of person that, didn't get immersed in the punditry of politics, but he understood that he needed to understand the dynamics and the fundamental issues. And I admired him so much. He was such an influence on me that I keep his books right next to me. And every once in a while when I say, oh, I just can't take this shit anymore, I go back and I read that.
Oh, right on. I forgot what an incredible writer he was. Yeah. Really, his prose is great. I couldn't sleep last night. I woke up in the middle of the night, so do my phone thing in the middle of the night, and put it on the sleep mode, obviously. So do eventually get back to sleep. I don't tweet at 3 a.m. Like other people. I was flipping through some of his old stuff, and I mean the versatility. I got his. I printed it up. I'm an old man these days. I print up everything on paper now, like scribble notes at the top of it. All right, he's been writing, and his language, his tone, and his writing, it kept with the times. It was really interesting. How you guys knew each other for a long time? It was like how did he change over time?
Well, no, I don't want to overstate it. Actually, the picture that I included in that article was an interesting moment because we did know each other through some, obviously mutual acquaintances. And It's a very short story, I promise. It was the 2016 Republican convention in Cleveland, the one that nominated Donald Trump. And security was incredibly tight. There was a gigantic fence and perimeter around the field. And as I was walking there, a van pulls up, and you know that he was in a wheelchair.
That's
He
right.
was a quadriplegic, and he comes down the ramp in his wheelchair from this, and they drop him off in front of what looks like the right gate, but it's not the right gate. He does not have access for his wheelchair. So we were chatting briefly, and I said, well, I'll go with you. We'll find out where to go in. We had to walk all the way around the perimeter, and I must admit that he was going quite quickly. It was a very, very hot day. And I'm not as young as I used to be. And I just remember kind of sweating and trying to keep up and not panting. We were talking the whole time about what was happening to our politics, what was happening to the Republican Party. And it's always stuck. It has always stuck with me. But, you talk about him as a stylist. He's also influential to me as a writer, because he wrote and talked about what it is to write the column and to get it just right, to make the right points, and that deep satisfaction you get when you realize that it is finished. It is that perfect thing, that 700 words. He wasn't one of the people who thought, I need to write 3,000 words of meandering prose to get to the point. It was for him very carefully constructed, but that was also the way his mind worked. And his mind was very precise, and he didn't engage in cliches and cant. And so, especially now when you see the quality of our political commentary, it is refreshing to go back and read someone like a Charles Krauthammer, especially now when it's so easy to be overwhelmed by all of this. And the other one last point is, he had a sense of history. He had a sense of the flow of history and the stakes of history, which is the portion that I excerpted when he walks through, why we need to care about politics, why, I would love to spend my time reading many of the books that I have here in this study, or, just walking with my dogs. But ultimately, everything depends on getting that right. Otherwise, every beautiful, important thing can be destroyed. And that is literally true in the age we live in now.
Yeah, it's thinking about him and the sweep of history. One of the columns they wrote after September 11th, which, rightly, I mean, right, you could point to any pivotal moment, but noted the end of the post-war period, right? That entering into the age of terror, and it was funny to me to see, because you read through this, and it would be easy to forget in this modern media environment just how conservative he was, all right, and how staunchly, and the prose, while sweeping and and florid at times, was also very acrid at times too. Like, he knew when to pull out the knife. And, before coining Trump derangement syndrome, he coined Bush derangement syndrome.
Well, the other thing about, now that you mentioned, since we're going into Krauthammer, yes, he was a staunch conservative, but he was not the kind of conservative that we see right now. And one of my frustrations with folks that say that Donald Trump is just a logical extension of conservatism, the conservatism was always going to end up this way. Well, no, not if you knew a Charles Krauthammer, not if you read what he wrote. He comes from a very, very, very different tradition. And it's one of the reasons why, when so many other people were becoming magnified, he stood out against it. I mean, he was a regular on Fox News. He had a lot of incentives to go along with the tribe, and he did not do that, because the man also had this fundamental integrity and principle, and I miss that very, very much. But again, for people who want to get a sense of what was conservative in the before times, go back and read some of this, and to realize how different the tone and the mentality and the values are that he brought to all of this. And I as I was listening to you do the introduction, and we're going through what the defining aspects of the Trump administration are, to think that American conservatives would have been okay with this at one time is so unthinkable if you have if you were old enough to remember that. And so I mean, it's most conservatives did not look back on the darker elements of the Nixon administration or Joe McCarthy with a great deal of nostalgia. Now, some did, but those were not the mainstream that the party was going toward before 2016. So a little bit of flashback, PTSD flashback for me.
It is a PTSD. I feel it. My God, it is. So, you had on, and I was thinking about this as I was writing the newsletter this morning. You recently on your podcast, To the Contrary, Substack of the same name, and super pumped you were back in it, because there was a time where you did take like a modicum of a break, like a day, maybe like 2 days, something like that.
Just a little bit.
It's like the Addams Family here, right? It's like somebody else can study porcelain. All right.
Yeah.
You had very powerful, and I love seeing Kasparov, because his insights on what we are facing are just so incredible. You said, just call it what it is. Fascism. Now is not the time to be silent. Silence is what they want. Certainly what the White House wants. That is the messaging coming out of the official administration messaging right now, is to stay silent. And you said it's time to be brave and courageous and to label it fascism as such. Why?
Well, I mean, part of it is trying to cope. How do you remain sane and decent, in this particular environment, particularly after the assassination of Charlie Kirk? And I wrote, and this Charlie Kirk was somebody that I had met at one point, that I was shocked and horrified and disgusted by his assassination and by some of the celebration of it. But what's very clear now is that the right and the administration is officially weaponizing it. It is state-sponsored cancel culture. And so this is that moment where what the push is not to be critical, not to call attention to the threats to democracy, not to use terms like fascism when I think fascism is important. Now, look, I understand let's not use terminology like literally Hitler. That is extreme, that is inflammatory. But this is not the moment to not criticize what's happening, because it is at ramming speed. There's no velvet glove on this particular fist. And you are seeing some of the most raw authoritarian rhetoric coming out of Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Stephen Miller, Pam Bondi right now. And the whole point is to stigmatize any criticism, to make people fearful to criticize, to make people think maybe I shouldn't talk about this. And this is the worst thing to do right now when the threat is the greatest. I mean, in my newsletter yesterday, I said, at that moment when the truth is the most difficult and it's almost impossible to tell, that's exactly the moment when it is critically important to tell it. And I don't think we can. I don't want to overstate it, but as you were walking through what's happening right now, this is I won't say historically unprecedented, because it has happened in this country before, but the threats against critics and speech in the media is growing exponentially by the day. And we need to understand that and respond to it and push back against it.
I think that to me, right? I mean, think back a year ago, right? This is only a year ago when we were writing about criminal trials of a former United States president and the Republican, the front-running Republican candidate, and then ultimately nominee, an assassination attempt, 2 assassination attempts, really. And it's like I kept on writing every day that, another historic milestone, another historic. I mean, springing from January 6th and the insurrection. And I feel like now, and I fall into this, where it's like, oh, well, everything's so historic these days. Like, what is really historic? Like, there's that lizard brain.
Good question.
Part. And I get numb to it as, somebody who's in the middle of it constantly. I can only imagine, what civilians, normies have to deal with regarding this.
Well, and a lot of them check out, which of course is something that in an authoritarian regime, you want people to basically say, okay, you know what, maybe I should just check out. What is true? I don't know what's true. I'm just going to go along with what my tribe says. So all of that. But you're right. I mean, you know, you've had one major inflection point after another. This is something that I struggle with, by the way. And why I spend a lot of time when I'm not writing, actually reading history. I actually do nerdy things like that. To ask really, you know, when we look back on this 20, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, what are the decisive moments going to be? What are the real turning points? What is the white noise in the background that we can turn down that is not going to be significant? And what will matter? I mean, I think, you know, in the way that we know that 9/11 matters, I think January 6th matters. I do think that a lot of the things that are happening in Trump 2.0, we're going to look back on as one of the darker chapters.
Yeah.
I'm actually rereading a book about the Red Scares in 1919, 1920, what we went through back then. It's kind of a forgotten chapter, but things got very, very, very ugly. And it's a reminder how fragile some of these histories are. I mean, I think we think that we Americans are so exceptional that we are immune to many of these things, and the reality is that we're not. And that a lot of the things that we tell ourselves, well, that couldn't happen here, not only can happen here, but some of them already have. And so Trump, it's real. By the way, you mentioned right before I came on this amazing exchange between Donald Trump and Jonathan Karl from ABC. Now, there's so many interesting parts of this. So Jonathan Karl is asking Donald Trump, what about Pam Bondi saying we're going to go after hate speech? I mean, you right-wingers have been basically saying for years there's no such thing as hate speech. Well, what are you doing? And Trump basically turns right to Karl and he says, she might come after you. She might come after you. And then he reminds Jonathan Karl, remember, I got ABC to pay $16 million for hate speech. Now, okay, it wasn't hate speech. It was a bogus case. It was a payoff. But once again, ABC told itself, right, that if we just pay off Donald Trump, he'll go away. We will be safe. One of the lessons we need to learn is that paying off the tyrant does not make you safe. It makes him stronger and bolder. And so for Donald Trump to turn that around and to say to Jonathan Karl, yeah, the Attorney General of the United States might criminally come after people like you because of things you say. And this is the same day that he sues the New York Times for $15 billion, another bullshit lawsuit. And there are going to be more of those. There are going to be more of those, Tom.
Yeah. It's the constantness of it and the sweep of it. Yeah. And it's so easy, you know, it's easy to forget, right, that a massive change in the United States, of the last 50 or 60 years. So, 25% of our nation's history was taking the Justice Department, maybe 20% of our nation's history, taking the Justice Department back to being a personal tool of the president. Yeah, that's really stunning to me. I remain stunned.
It ought to be, and we ought to be stunned by it. You know, you mentioned numbing. This is the thing that we always have to pressure. You know, keep going back and forth. Don't become numbed by this. You know, even though you've seen it before, or some of us have predicted it before, we still need to be shocked by what's happening. And I mean, look, there are times in history when the president of the United States clearly did manipulate the Department of Justice. We thought that we had gotten past that moment in history, and this is kind of like the reverse bizarro Watergate, where all of those guardrails that had been set up have been absolutely destroyed, but far more than we imagined, because I think we had gotten complacent in believing that we had all of these norms that protected the independence of the Justice Department. And Donald Trump basically rolls in and goes, fuck the norms. If it's not in the law, if it's just an honor system, I don't care about that. I mean, the system was set up as kind of a under the assumption that you'd have honorable men and women sitting in the Oval Office in the Department of Justice. If you don't, you suddenly find out that all of those checks and balances are kind of suggestions, are kind of, good manners, but can be overturned. And Donald Trump, the thing about Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Pam Bondi and Stephen Miller is they make no secret of what they are doing and what they intend to do. None. No subtlety.
It reminds me of, I think if there's been a hero, I don't mind saying it, a hero in this in terms of public presence, it's been Spencer Cox, the longtime governor of Utah, who is, in his own right, has no problem calling out the bullshit I mean, what a great term, outrage entrepreneurs.
Well, he's right.
Yeah, it's so good. And I think about what, and he's made this comment before that it is, leadership in this moment. And it reminds me of what Liz Cheney said at the end of the January 6 hearings, to the point of you can have all of the structures in the world. You can have arguably the world's greatest constitution, given, despite all and any imperfections, still the bedrock of democracy around the world. At the end of the day, it comes down to people and decisions, leadership,
and values, and whether you're going to have courage or whether you are willing to take that stand. And part of the the problem is that, and going back to Cox's comment about the outrage entrepreneurs, is we have all of these incentives out there, all of the ideological investment to be more and more extreme and not to stand athwart it and say, no, this is wrong. Spencer Cox is trying to do that. Is it going to make a difference? Probably not. I actually did a whole piece where we listened to Spencer Cox. I really did admire his comments. I do have to note that in 2024, he decided that he was going to endorse Donald Trump for a second term in the White House. And at that moment, I don't think it's possible to have any illusions about what Trump was, what he would do. And so even sort of, it's one of those where, the worst are full of passion and intensity and the best lack all conviction. It's like, okay, Spencer, you're kind of there. We're kind of almost there, but not quite. But yes, it was an important voice. It was a very important voice. I wish there were more.
In terms of how you handle these things, because I think this is really important. These are real world decisions made, in split seconds, with the announcements by the president, the whims of the president as he tweets, truths, whatever it is, where the National Guard will be dispatched next. Do you take a Washington D.C. Muriel Bowser approach of trying to assuage and hoping that it doesn't last too long? Even Pence himself, will still heap praise on Trump periodically. I mean, he threw him a lifeline on tariffs not too long ago. Like, what do you think?
No, look, I mean, you can't with Donald Trump. You're if you're not groveling if you're groveling at his feet, he's going to continue to step on you. This is why I mentioned the ABC story. This belief that if you just throw him a few bones, he won't eat you, or he'll eat you last. And I think that's one of the games that you're playing here. And so you see all these leaders troop in, and it's like, oh, dear leader, you are so wonderful. You are so fantastic, and you absolutely do not have a teeny tiny penis. I mean, that's the thing from South Park. I mean, they really got that. It's like, you just have to constantly be stroking this man's ego. You have to be saying all these things to him. And it's so embarrassing and it's so humiliating, but you can tell that people are saying, just suck up to him. Just tell him how wonderful he is. Never disagree with him. And down the road, you'll get something you want. Or maybe, and they rationalize this, I'll be in the room when some terrible thing's about to happen, and I will be the one that says, don't do that. Of course, that never actually happens. It never comes. But they tell themselves this is the price to be in the room. And let's face it, the payoffs are great. This is the greatest grift in American history. I actually think that it's possible that, once you tabulate it all, it will be one of the greatest grifts in world history. And there are obviously, you lay out, that much honey, and you're going to get flies gathering all over the place, and they're going to do what it takes, while the getting is good. And so that's part of it as well. We've gone from sort of ideological tribalism to, but the judges, but Gorsuch, to holy shit, do you understand what you can get if you are part of this world right now?
There's these moments where it's like, the absurdity of it all, where it's you have like the Inside the Beltway publications, which caters to this crowd. I mean, that's why it's its own industry, the lobbying industry for power players trying to figure out how they are going to get what they want. That, I can't remember exactly. It could have been Axios, could have been Politico, could have been any of them who wrote this. And it was one of these soft, of the moment stories, which I can't believe there's any such thing right now. But it basically was, if you would like to butter his ass, here is how many sticks you need to bring with you. All right. Here's the, don't forget the powdered sugar, right? Bring a cup of, this and whatever, right? If you're the president of South Africa, who handled it so well. I think this was around his trip to the White House. And you read this, it's like, this is so out to lunch.
Give him a plane. Give him, or if you're Tim Cook, one of the richest men in the world, you bring him this gold thing, golden apple, and it's like, you kind of know that, you hope that they leave the room and they kind of roll their eyes, but this is the reality that we're in. And look, we've talked about this before. I think the most shocking part about Trump 2.0 is not Trump's desire for revenge and vengeance and being a dictator for a day. He said he was going to do all that. The most shocking part of it is watching one institution after another bend the knee to him. How thin and flabby the opposition was, watching the billionaire oligarchy. And I'm sorry to give the language here, but I mean, this is the question, that these are people with fuck you money that are not willing to say fuck you. I mean, what is the point of having the fuck you money if you're not willing to do it? And what Donald Trump understood is, the richer you are, the more you have to lose. And so watching the corporate, one corporation after another, corporate media after one after another, the law firms, I think, was a big shock to a lot of folks. The willingness of universities to cave in, and all of them thinking, if we just give him what he wants, maybe he'll go away, or maybe it won't be so bad. This is the rationalization in their heads. And time after time after time, the evidence is right there saying, no, this is not going to work. It's not going to make you safer. It's not going to make things better. It makes things much worse. And yet they keep doing it.
Just insanity. Let's do let's do some comments here. Questions. Reminder, folks, if you're watching us live here on Substack, drop in some comments, quotes, whatnot. Ian is on the board, and he will gather them up, nice and nasty. We'll take all of them. Okay, free speech.
Why not?
And yeah, it's like
we've heard it all by now.
I know, right? What left is there? If you don't shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, at least take a shit on Fifth Avenue, okay? And then you tell us about it. We'll review that. That probably wouldn't get more than a minute of airtime these days. Here's PJ Schuster. Why is Erica Kirk getting $5 million through a GoFundMe when she is a millionaire? She made a ton more than $5 million. That's a good question. Yeah.
I'm not gonna go there, because this is the grieving widow, and if you've ever been through a tragedy in your life, something like this, there's a zone afterwards in which I think that people should just not be held accountable for anything they say or do. I mean, this is a woman who has young children, and is she making bad choices? Maybe, but you know what? I'm just not going to go there right now. There'll be world enough in time to talk about that later.
Discretion is the better part of valor.
It's also just fundamental decency.
Yes, exactly. Just being a human, which is all right. This is what we need to re-inject back into the world.
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
lead this way.
she's a person. I mean, I think
Yeah,
one of the worst things in our politics is we start thinking of people in the media and in politics as entities, when actually just I used to say this all the time, and it sometimes comes off as a kind of just a cliche, but we're actually talking about real human beings, who
yeah,
get up in the morning and have the same fears and worry about
yeah,
their parents and have children, and even the worst asshole in the world is still like human being. Just
yeah,
remember this.
yeah, totally. Here's Ruth Clark. Hey, Ruthie, I
Mm.
like this one. She says, I think that Mr. Krauthammer's quote here is valuable as we navigate through existential questions raised in the last few days. Quote, I believe that the pursuit of truth and right ideas through honest debate and rigorous argument is a noble undertaking.
Well, that encapsulates who Charles Krauthammer was, and one of the reasons why he inspires me, but also that if you cling to that particular view of political commentary, how incredibly out of place you are in the current age, and how difficult it is. But yes, this is who he was, and why we keep reading and talking about it.
You think there's ever a chance that we get back to that normalcy or decency in our lifetimes?
Not mine.
Oh, Jesus.
Did you wanted a more hopeful answer?
Uh,
You've heard my distinction between optimism and hope, right? Optimism is the belief that things are just going to get much, much, much better. Okay, I'm not an optimist. Hope, however, is the belief that if you work very, very hard, if you confront the demons that we confront, that
mm,
maybe you can make things better. Actually, Spencer Cox made that distinction as well. So I
yes.
think that we need to be hopeful. If we're not hopeful, why are we doing this? Why do we
Mm,
bother to do this? Um, but just assuming that we're going to snap back, I think it would be incredibly naive to think that what Trump has unleashed, but
mm,
also what he has ridden. I mean, he's both
yeah,
a symptom of and a creator of what's happened. That's going to go away. It's not. It's not. Something is broken in our culture,
mm,
beyond our politics, and that's not going to be easily fixed.
yeah.
Tragically.
I really want to. This is something we got to put our heads
Mm.
together on this one. If you remember when Jeff Horowitz I think it was at the Wall Street Journal. I used to work with him at the AP.
Mhm.
Incredible investigative reporter. He did that series on the whistleblower from Facebook, talking about how the algorithms were tuned
Yeah.
to create this insanity.
Well, we're seeing that, and it's not just Facebook anymore.
Yeah.
I think it was this morning I was reading the piece that Charlie Warzel wrote in the Atlantic, where he said, part of the moment we're in right now is that we've unleashed this massive debate about, justice and decency and violence and everything, but that debate is largely going to take place within this social media ecosystem, in which the most extreme views are going to be pushed forward, in which the outrage and anger entrepreneurs will be working at working overtime. So unfortunately, it requires some huge shift. And
Mm,
this is something, by the way, I keep looking for when I do the history stuff. I'm going to get wonky again. To
yeah.
go back and say we had in the past these wild frenzies, when the fever seemed to be overwhelming us. What broke those fevers? And unfortunately, it's usually something really horrific. What broke the fever of the 1850s? The Civil War.
Uh,
What broke the fever of that we experienced after World War II? Well, unfortunately, it was the Great Depression, and I'm sorry, after World War I. So you hope that it doesn't take some sort of a thing like that to turn things around, but something's broken, and it's going to be incredibly hard to put the pieces back together again. Sorry.
it's real. That's real. We got to face it. That's why
Yep.
we do this,
Sorry.
right? Here's Larry Ortega, oblique artist. Mr. Krauthammer was both prophet and philosopher.
He was.
Yeah, really. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I haven't read him in years, and it was refreshing. I was like, my God, my brain like relaxed Just, you know.
Well, and again, he had this fundamental humanity and decency that went through everything. Look, I mean, he got things wrong
Mm,
occasionally. But I think that that's also reassuring, is to realize that if you do this, if you are going to immerse yourself in the stream of politics, as opposed to go off into your Tuscan villa, and take a warm bath and philosophize, you're going to get it wrong sometimes.
mm,
You're not omniscient, and I think that there's a humility to that as
mm,
well, that he had. That I didn't see that coming, or I misjudged that person. Sometimes you misjudge them by being too positive. Sometimes you misjudge them by not seeing the warning signs. And so that's another one of those lessons that I've learned from rereading his columns.
hell yeah. Yeah. Okay, Charlie, we're gonna wrap this up here.
Sure.
Where do we find your work? What's up next? You're nonstop. So what's the latest coming up?
Well, okay. Almost everything I do now is going to be on Substack, is going to be on To the Contrary. We have a podcast today with Tom Nichols, where we're Hello Darkness, our old friends. I'm going to be talking with David French later this week. And I have been toying with writing the article that I've been touching on with you. Is that, it did happen here. And just a reminder of how vulnerable you are. The episodes in history, especially, is another thing that's happening, is this rewriting of history. That Trump is going into the museums and saying, let's not show the scars on slaves and things like that, that we are rewriting our history. I think this is a moment to kind of remember, who we are and how vulnerable we are. So that's over the next couple of days. And again, any of us that are out here having this conversation, we're not necessarily always going to be observers. When Trump and Vance and Pam Bondi and that whole group says we're coming after, the people on the other side, I think we all need to be looking over our shoulders. So I think the other thing I want to talk about is the fear is the point, and how it works with so many folks. By the way, in today's newsletter, if I can just do this, I have a long essay from a professor from the University of Indiana about Indiana University. I'm sorry, where he talked. Are you from there? It's a great piece.
I'm an adopted Hoosier. IU,
Okay.
UI is to the west.
Yeah. Well, so but Jeffrey Isaac has this long piece, much longer than I usually run, about that the moment now, how concerned he is, how he's concerned about writing and talking and the pressures on academics and journalists. And I think we have to confront this issue of what this moment is, especially when we have this state-sponsored cancel culture that has these vast resources to find anyone who is saying things that are unacceptable. And by the way, Tom, you and I are not immune from that.
Yeah. Did you know what? This is this one is from the left. James Lowen, Lies My Teacher Told Me. You read that one?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I love his. I picked it up again. These new Barnes and Nobles are so good. The redos they did, and I love putting away my phone and just being, perusing everything, getting lost in there. The thesis and his central finding of why he did the book was because so many, and this is in the 90s, so many students were just bored to death by the whitewashed history that was sanitized so that you could sell it to a California school board and a Texas school board.
I remember
the warts, the pox, everything. It's compelling. It's interesting.
Actually, history is always, this is another one of my things, is history is always way more interesting than you think it is. And one of the things that I actually like doing is I like going back and reading what I would describe as the contemporaneous history, including some of the the diaries that people kept at the time, where you see how little they necessarily understood about their time, what they saw coming, what they didn't see coming, because we live through, history sometimes is in this package. Well, this was the theme. This is what happened. This was the pattern. In real time, we don't know that, do we? We don't know what story we're in. We don't know whether we're in the movie, whether we're in a rom-com or we're in a tragedy or we're in a horror movie or whether it's a police procedural. We don't know. We know we're in this, but we don't know exactly what kind of show or role we're playing.
I really hope it ends up with Liam Neeson as the new Frank Drebin. That'd be the best ending to all this.
That would be wonderful.
Charlie, thanks, brother.
Right, thank you.
It, man. Thank
anytime.
Okay, guys. We're going to wrap it up here. I'm Tom LoBianco. Make sure to sign up, 24site.news. We'll have some updates for you on more shows this week. A lot to get to. We've got a weird MAGA civil war going on right now with a lot of new conspiracy theories from folks like Candace Owens, which you'd be shocked. If there's anything to be shocked by, you can actually still be shocked by this. Sign up 24-Site News. Make sure, I'm sure you do this already if you're watching us here, but go to the contrary, Charlie Sykes. His stuff is just incredible. The sweep of history, so that we understand what we're doing. We know how to proceed properly, justly, decently. Okay. Catch us at 8 p.m. on the replay. Political Voices Network over on YouTube. I'm Tom LoBianco. Thanks for being here, guys.